Welcome, everyone, to the Contact Center Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. Today, we've got a super interesting conversation with Darcy Perry. Now, Darcy, you're the Customer Experience Manager at the Franke Group Systems. That's a manufacturing company. I'll let you explain a little bit more about that. But you have some unique backgrounds. You actually started in customer service at age 12. I'm going to let you expand on that just a little bit. You've covered a lot of different industries, from contact centers for fire and dispatch, and that's a very unique kind of a role. You went on to post notes and where you are now with the Franke Group systems or copy systems. If you wouldn't mind expanding on that before we dig in, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, so at age 12, it was an all hands on deck experience. My parents both own their own businesses, and so it was all family so that we could make sure that we had food on the table. We wanted our parents to succeed so that we could also succeed in life. So we started doing Medicare crossovers and helping our mom with billing. And we would sit around the dining room table and do that. And then it just progressed into customer service from there. I've always had a heart for customer service. I think I learned that from my mom, to be honest. I'm very grateful for that. From there, I moved into police and fire dispatching. I did that for almost 10 years of my life. And that really taught me prioritization and how to manage calls and how to really hone in on my soft skills. From there, moving into Postmates. Postmates was a fantastic position where I was able to take them from a contact center to an actual call center. And then moving into manufacturing, something I've never done before, but I took on the challenge, and I love being with Franke Group at this time.
Great. Here's what I'd like to do. I can understand the answer to this question I'm going to ask you for fire and police dispatch. But the question is, for a contact center, how important is that for the overall growth and sustainability of the company? One, not important at all. 10, it's critical to the overall growth and sustainability of the company. Where would you put it for business on that scale of 1 to 10?
I'm always going to put a call center or a contact center at level 10 because they are really the face of your company. They're the people that are going to be interacting with your customers on a daily basis. They can make or break a company. And I feel like putting them up there really shows the significance of what they are to a company.
And when you say can make or break a company, elaborate on that for us just a little bit.
You can have a good call or a bad call, a good email or a bad email. It can really take the success of a company and really make it really great because they had a great experience. They were like, oh, this person was super knowledgeable. They understood my problem. They resolved this immediately. Or it can really break you because it can be like, these guys have no idea what they're doing. They're taking me for everything I'm worth. And the power of social media, that one thing can actually make it onto the internet. And we know that can actually make or break a company.
Yeah, it can. It starts to erode the trust and the reputation of the company. And that's all we really have these days. In fact, trust is, according to all the surveys, is on a major decline right now. So one of the things that we want to do is we want to make sure that we're building trust with our customers, getting that word of mouth and the NPS scores and everything that we want. In this kind of context and environment, what to you are the key challenges in call centers? We talked about turnover as well on our previous call.
Yeah, it is very hard. It's an entry-level position, and sometimes it's a thankless position. I think sometimes in being able to mentor and coach employees, we have a tendency to sometimes focus on the negativity because that's what bubbles up to management. And we don't always, oh my gosh, this was such a great call. Holy cow, you did a great job. And sometimes we have to really take that and come back and really focus on all the wonderful things that they're doing. The 100 calls that went great and not the one that went bad, because it is entry level. There's a lot of skills that perhaps our employees don't know. And it's up to us as managers to be able to coach and mentor them, teach them the skills that perhaps don't come naturally, especially in the world that we live in today. We have a lot of employees who are very into texting. I know sometimes when you read notes, it's like reading another language because they've gone ahead and they've put in these kind of crazy notes where they're using acronyms or something that you don't quite understand because our younger employees, they're very used to all the kind of small, not writing the way that maybe some of us older people are going to look at. But I do appreciate the fact that even though it is an entry level position, it's a very important position. And I think we definitely need to do better at teaching them those soft skills, how to manage a call, how to take control of a call, how to really manage their own emotions when you have an emotional caller, something that can be very difficult on a phone. And I talk about that right from sometimes a 911 perspective into what would be healthcare or into a manufacturing position. It always feels like somebody's in a rush. They want what they want right now. And how do we control that and make sure that our emotions are checked as we're assisting that customer as well?
So that's a really interesting analogy. And what's the learning from working in a dispatch, a fire and police dispatch, where there's life and death on the line? They can be. And what did you learn there that directly translates over to the world of B2B and B2C in call centers and how you manage the call centers today?
I think a lot of it would be prioritization. Sometimes it's very hard to pick and choose. How do I prioritize a call? Obviously, in 911, that's easy. If it's a life or death situation, you're priority one, and then you scale down from there. If it's a fireworks complaint call because your neighbor doesn't like you're setting off fireworks, you're usually a priority 10. And I'm going to take my police officers and put them where they belong. But sometimes when you're coming into more of a B2C or a B2B, it's a little bit harder to prioritize that. So, what you have to do is you have to look at it and make sure that you're addressing the customer's needs, that you're setting timelines, that you're prioritizing their needs as well. I think one of the skills to teach is teach them to give an actual resolution date or at least a check back in date. If you give somebody a time frame and you stick to it, that's another soft skill. It allows them to know that you're going to actually follow up. But if you set that date, make sure you follow up. Another skill, because we need to make sure that we're actually following up on that to give them that level of trust to know, hey, I don't know the answer to this yet, but I don't want you to think I've forgotten about you.
It's one of the biggest things when we talk to somebody, no matter how, chat or on the phone, we don't always have a lot of trust that there's going to be follow up. So you're right. A date is like, oh, okay, it's on a list. It's prioritized in a certain way that gives you a higher degree of feeling that you're going to be taken care of right away. So you talked a lot about this entry level and that it's entry level, not only how they communicate, but it's a entry level pay too. Yet we're trying to treat them, bring them into a culture, make them feel special. What are the kind of things that you do over and above pay when it's an entry level position to make them feel like they're a big part of the team and an important part of that team?
I brought a lot of skills from police and fire dispatching, and I'll probably always go back to that because I learned a lot there. One of the things that I will encourage people to do, you are talking about entry level, and your hands do get tied on certain things that you can actually do, especially if you have temporary employees. But one of the things that you need to think about is if I'm going to throw them a party to maybe celebrate them or encourage them, what does this party look like? Have I actually put thought and emotion into it so they understand that what I'm doing for them is because I'm bringing it to them because I'm proud of them? Or is it just because I'm ticking a box? One of the things that I have thought through on that, especially when I worked at Postmates, is we had 3 shifts. So you had your morning, noon, and midnight shifts. And a lot of times, and you'll see memes and other things about it, the midnight people come in, they're all excited because we've all talked about this party we're going to have, and they open up the box and there's crumbs in the box. And they're like, what the heck? What I learned is that you really need to think through when you celebrate employees. You need to make sure that everybody gets celebrated the same and that you're really being intentional in those kinds of things. Not only that, but you need to celebrate the small wins, the things that perhaps don't normally get called out, so that they understand they're doing a good job. You find a lot of employee motivation on that. Also, sitting with your employees, there's a lot that has to be said about that. You will be able to listen to them in real time and coach them in real time because you're going to hear all the small minutia that you might not hear or even see if you're able to sit with them. A lot of times, what I found when we were in call centers and we were actually in a building, I would go and do my shadowing with my employees. I'd be sitting there, and you could just see in their face that they were either confused with the information that they were about to give or that they were uncomfortable with what they were talking about. And I would make sure that I would just encourage them through that. And then once we would get off the phone, we do a deep dive into that conversation so we could talk about how we could have changed it. I liked having that kind of personal one-on-one time. Do not negate your one-on-one time with your employees. And if you are a manager of leads, so you've got so many different hierarchies, encourage your team leads to go and do things like this. And then sit together with your team leads and talk through, how did that go? What could we change? What holistically do you think that we can do? But I will tell you, one of the biggest proponents is listen to your people. They are doing this job every single day. And as a manager, you're not. And if you are not listening and you are not taking some sort of action to listen, even if you remind them, thank you for your 100 suggestions. Out of your 100 suggestions, maybe only 2 or 3 will get done. But let's prioritize those and figure out which would be those either easy hanging fruits we can take care of or the ones that we can actually get done. But listening to them so that they know that they can be heard, it goes a long way in building that trust and communication with your employees. And I am very into that. I love to be on the floor. I love to be able to feel the vibe, feel everything that's going on so that I know at what point my employees are actually really struggling. So I can step in at those times and say, what can I do to assist you?
Tell me if this is a factor in any of this, because I love just recognizing their performance, but then giving them a feedback mechanism so they actually feel like they can affect change. That makes somebody feel very important. But also, they're talking to customers every single day. And so that's learning. That's key learning. That's one of the most important things that a contact center can do. Like, how do you teach them to be good at assimilating lots of customer interactions into something that could help inform and teach the company to help it grow?
I think there's a feedback loop. So it's one of those things where if you create a feedback loop, especially with your team leads or if you're a direct supervisor, making sure that they know that they have that feedback loop and being able to assist each other. I love train the trainer type of programs and sometimes taking one person off of the phone and saying, will you go shadow this employee? You're one of my high performers. I think you could really assist them and give them some pointers. Sometimes just being given extra responsibility to be able to go and do something, taking them off the phone. One of the things that we have found, because sometimes as a supervisor, your hands are tied and you cannot provide them any kind of like financial compensation or anything, but to be able to say, here's a couple of hours off, or here's a coupon for something so you can go do this. There's different ideas thinking outside of the box, but sometimes all an employee wants is to be given some extra responsibility so someone understands that we know they're doing a really good job. But that's also how you're going to build your next future leaders. Because if I don't have someone to replace me because I haven't trained them appropriately, then I haven't done my job correctly.
Makes perfect sense. If you could tell me a little bit about, you've gotten into this area of soft skills in customer experience. And that's an area that in our last conversation, you spent a lot of time talking about these soft skills. If you could say, what are the top 3 soft skills that you try to train your agents on, what would those be?
Active listening would be my number one. I'm a talker. I love to talk. And sometimes I have a tendency to talk over people. And I have to really employ my own active listening skills. So that's always number one. Empathy with a customer, but not to a fault. Don't over empathize and then offer things that you cannot provide, but showing the appropriate empathy so that they can understand that you really are grasping why this is a problem. And then emotional intelligence, something that I think is really a lost skill. It's a buzzword in corporate. We talk a lot about it, but do we teach it enough? Do you know how to control your emotions while you're on a phone call? Maybe not. Don't take on the energy of the caller. You want to take on your energy. You want to be able to control that call, guide that caller. If they're coming in hot, you don't come back at them hot. So I find emotional intelligence is a really hard one that you've really got to hone in on. And the reason I'm using that kind of big overarching word is because it encompasses a lot of soft skills that can really be used on the phone.
I tell you that last soft skill, you'll learn that as a parent. Your kids are like a reflection of if you're upset, if you're frustrated, it's just going to escalate. So, having 4 teenagers right now, I understand that. I want to take a little bit of a right turn and I want to talk about your thoughts about AI in contact centers and where it's helpful and where it's not. How does AI fit into today's contact center? And what's the role versus the live human agent?
We all think that AI is going to do it better and it's going to save us money. And there is a lot of truth to that. But what you lose is the human interaction, the human touch. And a lot of us are craving that human interaction. It's really difficult sometimes to be a big proponent of AI when you are a customer experience manager, because what you're looking for is providing an experience that a customer is not going to forget. And so, how do you utilize that AI and be able to still give them that personal contact? I am an old timer, so I love to pick up the phone and call my customers, resolve the issue right in the moment, and be done with it. But I also know that's not always the best thing to do, too. I think that you have to be very careful in how you employ and utilize AI. There's some wonderful things you can do with it. You can be able to route people appropriately. You can answer easy questions, but I think you need to be careful that you don't use it for everything, that you really honestly and holistically bring it in. You don't lose that human connection. The human connection to your customers is always going to be important. And to be honest, I think we've got to be very careful. I think we walk a really fine line when we bring AI into things because we're like, oh, I can cut back the workforce, or oh, it'll eliminate all of these. But what you find sometimes is that it actually adds extra workforce or it causes more problems. And you don't usually know about those problems until they bubble up because you're just figuring AI has been handling these all this time. So I also see that sometimes you get more complaints on social media because they're like, I couldn't get past your AI bot. Don't make an AI bot be the end all. You need to make it some way that you can still reach a human to have those human interactions. I will tell you, I sometimes have a really hard time, even in my own personal life, where I get like caught in those AI bots. And I'm like, all I want to do is talk to somebody and resolve this quickly. There is something to be said about resolving things quickly with just a person instead of somebody trying to figure out how to game your AI bot.
So tell me, are the agents worried about AI taking over their jobs, or do they see it as a help from their perspective? What's the perception of AI in the contact center?
I think AI can be scary, especially when you count on your job or you really like your job. And so then it's like they're just really trying to replace me. I think what we need to do is help employees understand the benefit of it and really set the guardrails of what an AI bot or AI is going to do for them. How can it help them? Because it can be as easy as you have an AI bot while they're taking calls that they can actually be asking questions and it can bring up knowledge articles for them to be able to assist the customer. There's other things too in chat where you're sitting in chat, you're talking to the AI bot. You need to make sure that it's easy for that person to be able to then just say real person, or I need to talk to a representative. Because what ends up happening is, again, that AI loop. And we need to be careful of the AI loop because it does frustrate customer service. Because once you get on that phone and you finally get to a representative, that person by that time is completely out of control because they're like, why did I have to go through all this to get to this person? And then your agents really are working overtime to figure out how to best help this person. So I think, again, it's one of those fine lines that we have to walk across to make sure we're doing what's best for both the company and for your own representatives.
So, what I want to ask is because we've talked about a lot, but what haven't we talked about? What's important for us to know about the challenges of a contact center in creating that success, that 1 out of 10 importance, like where it can make or break a company? What haven't we talked about that's important?
I think managing people's time on the phone. When you're going to hire someone into a contact or a call center, make sure they understand the time that they'll be on the phone, how often they're allowed to walk away from the phone. Be upfront with that. I think there's a lot of miscommunication on that. And I think that can be very difficult, especially if someone's not prepared. You've got people who are contact center pros and they know that they're going to be either in chat or on the phone all day. Also, rotate them. So if you have people who are chat, you have people who are phone, and you have the ability to rotate those two things, give them the ability to get off the phone and be into just a chat. Because guess what? We all get into people burnout. And I think we need to watch our employees and make sure that we're identifying when they get to the burnout. Because I can promise you it's going to be a bad experience if you are talking to an agent that is completely burnt out. And talk to your employees through that. There's going to be things that you really need to make sure you recognize and you address to make sure that you keep them up here and not down here.
So, that goes right into my next question, which is you've made a lot of recommendations here, which is fantastic. But out of everything you've done in your career that started at age 12 in customer service, what are you most proud of that you've been able to accomplish?
I think it's my ability to move through the world and into different areas, all the way from healthcare into police and fire dispatch, and back into healthcare, then into Postmates, which is a .com kind of thing, and then into manufacturing. The thing I've been able to hold consistent is my love for customer service and my knowledge in what I've been able to prioritize and understand and coach and mentor my employees. Your employees are the most important thing that you will ever be a part of because even when they graduate from you and they move on, I want them to look back at their time with me and say, wow, I'm very grateful for what this person has taught me. But more than that, I want to look at my time with them and say, wow, I'm really grateful for what they taught me.
So, this then leads to my last question. Are you ready for this? If there was one thing, just one thing from everything that we've discussed here that you wanted people to take away from this episode, what would that be?
Treat your call center employees like they are the most important employee that you have. Remember that they are technically some of the most important people that you will have because they can make or break a company when it comes to that. Not only that, but give them opportunities. Look at them for what they are. They should be growing for the next step. It doesn't mean that you don't have your worker bees who love that type of work and who want to do that. But look for your next leaders in your call center because I promise you they've seen and they've done it and they're ready for that next challenge.
Darcy, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of these insights. If people had additional questions for you, would it be appropriate that we gave out a link to your LinkedIn profile that people could reach out?
Sure. I would love to connect with anybody who wants to know more about my passion for customer experience.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing everything today. It's been fantastic. And we'll look forward to having you back on in the future again.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it.